Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and it's finally time to take a look at what, in my humble opinion, were the best games to release in 2025. As always, I tend to focus primarily on games with strategic and tactical elements, meaning anything ranging from RTS games to city builders, management, grand strategy, automation, so on and so forth. Just as a reminder, this list is just an expression of my own personal opinion, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of my picks are controversial, or maybe you feel as though I've missed out on something great out there. So I would absolutely love to know your favorites from the year as well in the comments down below, especially for anybody else who's watching that might want more recommendations than the 5 I've got. Now with that said, with timestamps down below and with no more time to waste, let's begin. Tempest Rising comes in at number 5 as a classic RTS game that I was very cautiously looking forward to, one that felt almost too good to be true until it actually came out. While it did flub its launch a little with some weird pre-release access for extra money scheme that's more common among AAA games, they did quickly rectify the situation and made sure everybody could dive in and enjoy what is, frankly, a great slice of nostalgia for anybody who grew up playing any of the Command & Conquer games in particular. Set in an alternate history where the Cold War turned hot and went nuclear, the game takes you to the late 90s where two factions are pit against each other. The Global Defense Force, a self-proclaimed peacekeeping force that's fashioned as the good guys, and the Tempest Dynasty, a conglomeration of Eurasian nations uniting under one banner to supposedly fight off against GDF occupation. The game features 2 decent-length single-player narrative campaigns, one for each of these factions, and you can also skirmish against the AI or play multiplayer games, both across a decent number of maps that take the game from 2 to 6 players depending on the map you choose to fight on. The production value across the board is extremely high. Apart from some poor lip syncing and really bad mid-mission voice work, the game looks and sounds amazing. In the campaigns, fully rendered cinematics are paired with high-fidelity briefing conversations with your commanding officer and other important members of your chosen faction, and the actual mission selection screens are gorgeous as well, with UI made to match the factions as a nice extra touch. On the battlefield, the terrain and structures look phenomenal, and the units all have relatively interesting designs for the most part too, with a few standouts and some falling on the more generic side, visually speaking. Mechanically speaking though, the units are all very fun and inventive, with special unit abilities keeping things especially fresh here, introducing an extra layer of micro at times, and an extra layer of thought pretty much always, having you weigh the pros and cons of any given action at any given time, constantly. Infantry, armor, and air bring a great selection of units for both factions, and those are paired with a large number of buildings for economic, military, and defensive purposes, and everything here leans nicely into the sci-fi vibes of the game, both in terms of aesthetics and mechanics, like unit abilities, giving everything a far future feel even though the game is technically set during the 90s. If you like the old Command & Conquer games, this will be right up your alley. In particular, I get Tiberian Sun vibes. Nuclear fallout has given rise to a special resource known as Tempest, and that's what powers your economy regardless of which faction you play as, and that feels a lot like Tiberium to me. It's the only resource that you harvest in the traditional RTS sense, with others like Intel bringing fresh, modern ideas and layers to the game, even if just a little. That aside, I get real Brotherhood vibes from the Tempest Dynasty faction, and GDF and GDI are literally a letter apart in their names. The devs are also working on making the third faction playable, and they feel like a reference to the Skrin from Tiberium Wars. The nostalgia bait is going very hard here, but unlike every other attempt in recent years, Tempest Rising actually delivers on all the fundamentals of the genre, has a few fresh ideas of its own, and clearly tried very hard to hit a certain quality bar when it comes to visual fidelity too, earning itself a safe spot on this list. Schedule 1 is not a game I expected to enjoy, let alone have on this list of the best of the year sitting in the number 4 spot. At first glance, I didn't even expect it to be the kind of game that I would talk about on the channel at all, and I just picked it up to see what all the hype was about. Within moments, I was hooked. What seemed like a silly, goofy, memey game actually had a decent number of moving parts and was immensely fun to play, and the next thing I knew, I'd clocked over 40 hours playing co-op with my wife as we built up our little drug empire. I give you that preamble to say this. If you'd written the game off as I almost did, maybe reconsider that decision, and if you're wondering what Schedule 1 is doing here on a channel about strategic and tactical games, let me first say, I consider it to tap just enough into the management and automation genres, though it does come at them from a very unlikely angle. A paper-thin plot sees you arriving at a small town with nothing to your name but a talent for producing and selling drugs. That and some loose change allows you to book a motel room and start a small business where you must manually plant, water, harvest, pack, and sell product, chasing after hardware stores to get equipment and raw goods, ringing up your dealer for seeds, and dodging cops around town. Before long, you're buying more advanced equipment to design custom strains with varying effects, you're subcontracting dealers to reach more buyers, and you're managing your bottom line while doing all of this. I know this still doesn't sound like much of a management game, but if you want to run an efficient empire, you will want to optimize your seed and soil selection. You'll want to slowly start acquiring tools that help automate the process, and you'll want to start acquiring money laundering businesses, or cars to speed around town, or additional real estate to further grow your grow ops. And then if you truly want to scale, you need to hire employees and assign them tasks to help around your operations. A few different types of employees are at your disposal, from cleaners who keep things tidy to handlers who move things from place to place to botanists and chemists who produce different kinds of product. You'll purchase brick presses, chem labs, packaging stations, etc., and you'll assign recipes and routes, and the next thing you know, you're playing a mini automation game while balancing budgets, managing the limited time in a day, and running around town ducking cops and violent drug addicts looking for their next fix. It's hard to explain exactly why Schedule 1 hits the nail on the head so well. It certainly took me by surprise, and it's great to see the dev working hard at making huge updates to the game as well, taking community desires and sentiment into consideration every step of the way. The game isn't perfect, of course, and it certainly isn't the classic definition of a management, simulation, or tycoon game, but it stands out from the crowd, provides great entertainment value, and absolutely blew up on release. With any luck, for many, this will be the gateway into playing more management and simulation games. Either way, even though Schedule 1 isn't too high on this list, it's definitely earned its spot. Foundation, in at number 3, is a game that I've been praising since it first dropped into early access back in 2019, and very early on this year, back in January, they finally made the transition into the full 1.0 version of the game with a huge update to go with it. There are many city builders out there, so it takes a lot for one to stand out, and Foundation does so brilliantly. Leaning fully into city building, not layering on any survival mechanics or combat or anything like that, it takes an innovative approach to the most core aspects of the genre, fine-tuning it to greatness and then building on top of it. That's right, the very foundation is where the innovation lies here. Many city building games talk about organic city building as a key selling point, and they all approach things a little differently. But Foundation, in my opinion, hits the nail on the head, leaving a lot of micro-level decision-making out of your hands, asking you to trust your citizens, and then further asking you to build around their decisions. Foundation splits building construction into 3 categories: zone-based, ploppable, and what I'll call modular for the time being. For zone-based buildings, primarily homes, you paint out where you want people to live, and then your people will find a way to fit their house within that space, choosing whatever shape, size, and rotation makes things work. This couples very nicely with how paths are laid out. You have nothing to do with it, instead watching as the grass gets flattened into dirt paths the more your people walk over a specific area, mimicking how real-world desire lines form. If you've ever been to a park where the grass has clearly been flattened into a dirt path, that's real humans seeking out the most convenient route from point to point, often ignoring the paths that have been laid out by the municipality. Here, it's the source of all the walkways in your growing city, and it really brings life to the space as you can see how your people traverse it to get from place to place, and then proceed to plan around it. Ploppable buildings are the standard for this genre, allowing you to place specific buildings in specific places. These are typically resource gathering or goods manufacturing buildings. Finally, the modular approach is saved for particularly grand construction projects like monuments and churches and castles. Here you can pick and choose individual pieces to build a single building out of multiple smaller parts, with the cost and value of the building reflecting your construction decisions. This is a great reflection of when and where the powers that be would be more involved in the specifics, like building a cathedral and some kind of monument, as opposed to where they wouldn't, like placing each individual peasant's home down precisely. It's a good way to force the player to take a step back, and yet you never really feel powerless as a result, instead giving you a chance to take a moment every once in a while to just see how your more precise work complements the way your people are living. And this is just one aspect of what makes Foundation so great. Layer on top of that a wide selection of resources and goods alongside the buildings to extract and produce them, with 3 estates acting as sources of objectives through which you unlock more options and make progress, and just otherwise excellent execution across the core concepts and expectations of the genre. I could go on for a while about Foundation. The developers have done an excellent job making something truly special here, and it sits safely in this number 3 spot. Whiskerwood sits comfortably in the number 2 spot this year, but before I explain why, I do want to quickly note that outside of the channel, I am affiliated with the game's publisher, Hooded Horse. Even though the affiliation has no influence on what I cover or play on the channel, and even though they do not sponsor me in any way, I do like to mention my affiliation with them when I cover their games, just for the sake of transparency. The only reason I'm affiliated with them is because I like all the games they publish, so you're bound to see them on the channel from time to time, and if you want to know more about this affiliation, you can check out the video I've linked in the description down below. I typically exclude Hooded Horse games when considering picks for my Game of the Year video for this reason, but there really wasn't anything else more deserving of this spot this year in my humble opinion, and so here we are. Blending colony management with automation mechanics, Whiskerwood has you leading a colony of mice on a distant archipelago to establish an actual imperial colony in service of your cat overlords, tasked with extracting resources from these distant lands to help the feline empire. Right off the bat, the game sets its tone here. You are taxed by these cat oppressors for everything, and the way to pay off these taxes is through increased resource production. You're paying a tax for your population size. You're paying a tax for requisitioning resources that help set up the colony in the first place. You're paying taxes for keeping the colony going for longer. You're paying taxes on taxes. It's a hilarious look at how these systems of oppression operate, and it provides a driving force for you as the player. Line must go up, so to speak. To keep up with the growing tax burden, you need to get more and more efficient at extracting the various resources, pursuing industrialization and additional goods that accelerate the rate of acquisition of those core resources that the cats are interested in. You need to carefully plan workplaces and living spaces to ensure the finite workday is used to maximum effect, and you need to seek out high-value resources to mine or suitable lands to farm them on, often reaching new heights and depths as the game leans heavily into verticality. It's not long before you find yourself chasing automation. Conveyor belts and slides and lifts speed the movement of goods along, especially as you expand from island to island, and all this while you're trying to maintain the general happiness of your colony too, keeping your mice fed, clean, and warm, a challenge especially during the winter months. But with the benefits of industrialization come the pitfalls too. Clouds of pollution will turn your mice sick, for example, but fortunately, the game leans heavily into simulation in a way that allows you to control such things if you're clever enough. Wind pushes smoke away, for example, and underground burrows are easier to keep warm because of how heat spreads. And the simulations go beyond just these, of course, but they encourage you to engage in, for example, crop rotation and land reclamation, among other activities well beyond what you might initially expect from a game with cute, fuzzy mice milling about their vibrant little towns. And I'm just scratching the surface here. There are pirates to contend with. All your mice belong to guilds that impact what jobs they do best. They also have attributes that impact their efficiency alongside traits that influence their preferences, and there's a whole layer of policy setting and rebellion management too, with the latter being a key aspect of how the game will evolve over time. Whiskerwood is an immensely complex game, it's beautiful to look at, and it provides a serious challenge to anybody looking for one, while keeping the option for more relaxing playthroughs open for those who prefer that too. And what's more, there's already mod support. The devs have been rapidly deploying patches since release, and they're very active in the community spaces to keep an ear and eye out for how best to improve the game and what to add next based on what the community sees and wants. Whiskerwood will steal away hours upon hours of your life as you seek optimization, struggle through unique challenges, and celebrate hard-earned successes. It sits very comfortably in this number 2 spot as one of my absolute favorite games of the year, jostling for position with none other than Europa Universalis 5, sitting very easily in the number 1 spot, perhaps to nobody's surprise, or perhaps with some controversy. I'd already poured countless hours into the game ahead of its launch, and I know I'll be pouring countless more for the next decade to come. If you're unfamiliar with the series, EU5 is a grand strategy game set during the immense period of world-changing events that took place between the medieval and industrial eras. More specifically, EU5 begins in the year 1337 and extends right until 1837, taking you through everything from the 100 Years' War and the Black Death to the colonization of the world under mostly European hegemons. It does so by letting you pick any one of countless polities around the world to play as, and then setting you loose on a world driven by the simulation of countless factors, modeling everything from market forces to weather patterns to the spread of modern thinking and the various things that impact relations between nations, and not in some shallow way either. Each of these consists of further countless moving parts, intertwined systems, and surprising levels of depth and complexity. With so many dials to turn and levers to pull, EU5 becomes immensely replayable, and not only because it's so complex that it takes 100 hours just to learn the damn game. Playing as the spirit of your chosen nation rather than any specific person or dynasty, you're free to pursue whatever goals you want, though you'll need to bear in mind the constant simulations that power the world. So, maybe you want to be an economic powerhouse. Maybe you want to monopolize the fur trade. Maybe you want to colonize the Americas as an Indian king or scramble for Africa as the Ottomans, so on and so forth. The choice is entirely yours, as long as you can do so while keeping your treasury full, your people satisfied, and your nation stable. You'll run parliamentary sessions to push various agendas. You'll manage the distribution of power between various interest groups known as estates, and you'll even push society in various directions to determine what they value, in turn impacting how your nation operates and what it does best. At a micro level, you'll build individual buildings across your growing nation to acquire raw materials and produce processed goods with the aim of either fulfilling the needs of your people or using it to engage in trade with markets around the world and increase your people's wealth and, in turn, yours. Taxes are a wonderful thing, after all. Everything from food to clothes to furniture and precious metals are worth pursuing for various reasons, and optimizing every step is absolutely an option if that's your preference, though the game does provide ample automation if you prefer that too. Even going to war is full of simulated elements, as you need to produce the very weapons that your soldiers carry and ensure that there's ample food supply available along their march, otherwise watching attrition take its toll. I could go on for hours describing the various moving parts of the game because there are just so many, but what matters most is how it all comes together. There's certainly some room for improvement, but with such a large game with so many simulations, how could there not be? But just the sheer amount of freedom that the game allows is impressive, and once again, Paradox has released a grand strategy game that helps push the envelope in so many ways. Europa Universalis sits comfortably at the top of the podium in this #1 spot this year. It is undeniably my favorite game of the year, and I cannot wait to sink hundreds of hours into it every few months for the decade to come, if not longer. What a year it's been. As always, it's tough to parse it down to just 5 best to pick from, and if you're looking for more great games from the year, check out the video linked on screen right now. Don't hesitate to share your own top 5 in the comments below, and otherwise, as always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.